Welcome to today's webinar, MISAC Cyber Cities. Today, we're going to take an interesting look at cyber emergency planning. I'm your moderator, Jimmy Baker with Cal Poly's California Cybersecurity Institute. I want to thank everyone for joining us all across the great state of California today. Take a quick look at the agenda on your screen. This will let you know how we're going to spend the next hour. There'll be time for everyone's questions. A few housekeeping items about today's event. Today's presentation will be recorded. For the first 30 minutes of the presentation, I'm going to speak directly to the panelists. I have a few questions, and then I'm going to open it up to you, the audience, to ask your questions. We're going to record this webinar. We'll send out a link to everyone that's registered for today's event. An event like this takes a great deal of planning, and I'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsors, MISAC. If you want to learn more about MISAC, you can contact Brad Walker. His information is right there on the screen. The City of Roseville, you can learn more about them. Their web address is there. And Cal Poly's California Cybersecurity Institute. If you'd like to know more about that, you can contact me directly. We're now going to have a word from Hong Se, president of MISAC. Say.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Hong Se, and I have the privilege today of serving as the MISAC president. In addition, my full-time paying job is actually to serve as the Chief Information Officer for the City of Roseville at the great state of California. I'm very fortunate to have a great IT team here in Roseville. In fact, they are so phenomenal that after I make this welcoming remarks on behalf of MISAC, I'm just going to take a step back and let the members of my team, as well as Placer County and the state of California, presenting and picking up the ball and run with it and for the duration of the webinar. On behalf of MISAC, I want to welcome all of you for the second of the many webinars. We are pleased to be co-sponsoring with the California Cybersecurity Institute at Cal Poly. Our first webinar was a huge success, and I'm sure this one will be as well. Since we're confident of the success of this series of educational opportunity, we're already in the process of scheduling a number of similar co-sponsor webinars for the durations of year 2021. Before I turn this over to our presenter and panelists for the California Cybersecurity Institute, the City of Roseville, the County of Placer, and the California State CIO Office, I want to remind you all again of the California Government Collaborative Groups. I have the privilege of representing MISAC in this ad hoc special group that comprises of representatives from our counterpart from California County Information System Director Association, CCISDA, and the California Special District Association, CSDA. In addition to this three association, the collaborative group is well represented by the highest team members from California Departments of Technology, including California State CIO Amy Tong. The group has been meeting regularly with an agenda focusing on government IT issues, where we can all work better together for the betterment of services we offer for the great state of citizens of California. These issues include legislations, proposed regulations, broadband, and of course, cybersecurity, buying power, and many more issues we face as a government IT agencies and employee. As the group continue to evolve, I'll be keeping you apprised of the activity via MISAC Connect, MISAC Matters, emails, and other communication vehicle used by the association. Before turning this over to Jimmy, I want to wish all of y'all a very Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and Happy Holidays. With that, I'm going to turn this over to Jimmy to get this webinar started.
Thank you very much, Say. And as Say mentioned, we have an incredible lineup of events for next year. I'll have a slide on that at the end of today's presentation, but we're going to start talking in February about the dark web. So you want to make sure that you come for our next event. It is my pleasure. We have a wonderful lineup of panelists today. I'm going to have each of them introduce themselves. Vitaly, would you kindly introduce yourself to the audience?
Thank you, Jimmy. My name is Vitaly Panich, so I'm the Acting State Chief Information Security Officer. I've been with the state in various cybersecurity leadership roles for a little over 15 years now, spanning various lines of businesses or various departments within the state of California, from the Department of Corrections, Franchise Tax Board, Employment Development Department, and the Department of Child Support Services. Prior to joining the state, I did a little bit of time in the consulting world, primarily network operations engineering, as well as information security assessments and penetration testing around some of our local regional water districts and healthcare organizations. Myriad of cybersecurity certifications, obligatory alphabet soup, which I'm not going to get into, but I'm definitely excited and happy to be here with you guys. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Vitali. Deborah.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Deborah Curtis. I'm Information Security Officer at Placer County outside of Sacramento, and I lead the IT security team at Placer. I've been at Placer since 2017. Before that, I was with County of Nevada in IT for 10 years. And before that, I was an IT manager for networking and point of sale in the tourist industry in San Francisco on Pier 39. So very happy to be here today.
Art.
Art's on mute.
Yeah, I think so. Hey, Art, could you?
Unmute. There we go.
There we go.
So I get 3 more times to do that, right?
You have many times as you need, and I appreciate that. Thanks, Art.
So I'm Art Vauchlin. I'm the Assistant IT Director at the City of Roseville. I'm old, so I have a lot of different experience across government and private sector. I think I've been here at the City of Roseville for about 15 years, but a lot of my government sector experience has been in public safety and public safety technology. So I've got about 27 years of experience in either public safety operations and or public safety technology. And I'm just super excited to be here. This is a subject that I think everybody needs to know about, and I'm happy to be here with this great group of people to talk about it.
Thanks a lot, Art. And Marty, kindly introduce yourself.
Yeah, Martin Minnick. I'm the program manager of the California Cybersecurity Institute. My previous incarnation was I'm a 20-year Marine vet, and I basically was a commo, that communication officer that supported their requirement downrange in the battlefield and back home across the world. The real purpose of the CCI is to do what we're doing today. We're a partner for the state to help raise awareness, train and educate the California workforce to help protect and defend the state. So super happy to be joining this team of experts today, and just really proud of the work we're doing together.
Thanks, Marty. My first question today is for Art, and it's a really important question, Art, that has come up a lot from the registrations. People want to know, what is a cyber annex and how is it different from a cyber incident response plan?
Sure, Jimmy. Yeah, and that's a great question. You know, when you look at an incident management plan, it's usually designed to provide a common approach to reacting to some form or fashion of cyber incidents. Some of them are focused, some of them are more a framework for response. But in all cases, the incident response plan scopes the incident as being what you're planning, what you're trying to address. A cyber annex is different. A cyber annex is based on standard emergency management practices that are used in emergency operations centers around the United States. And it's documented in the agency's emergency operations plan using standard FEMA planning sections and content methodologies. So it's something that everybody, whether you're a technologist or whether you're working in public works or fire or whatever, people that are in the emergency management sector understand what it is that you're trying to do. It's a standardized approach, so everybody gets it, multidisciplinary, so it cuts across all emergency services functions. And the scope of it is not defined by the incident as much as it is by the geography of your agency. So just understanding that, you know, you now have an agency, a city, a county, a state. How do you manage to that, and what are the risks in those areas that you need to address, and who do you need to know to be able to partner with to make sure that everybody's talking the same language. So it turns out you end up building a multidisciplinary team for all these cyber infrastructure stakeholders, and you also build how you're all going to communicate, and not just with your internals, but your upstream partners. You know, if you're a city, you need to be talking to your county. If you're a county, you need to understand not only who's inside your county, but who's above you that you need to communicate with. So it really lays the foundation for how to move a big cyber incident through a standard FEMA type framework.
Thank you, Art. My next question is for Vitaly. As many of us witness, a cyber attack just doesn't impact one office or one group. It can impact multiple agencies throughout a region. How do you handle a response to attacks that spread across, an entire region or an entire state in our case?
Yeah, sure thing. So the answer, well, it could be easy, it could be not so easy. Communication, collaboration, coordination. Obviously, as Art alluded to, the FEMA standardization and the cyber annex, essentially it's a common taxonomy that we use when we speak to other emergency responders outside of the cyber world. I mean, obviously, in the day-to-day basis or in the kinetic world, in the non-cyber world, we all deal with risks and vulnerabilities and threats and impact. So a cyber annex, before you get to a tactical, technical incident response plan, it's really kind of the surface on kind of that taxonomy or the document that helps you point you in the right direction and be able to communicate, coordinate, and collaborate with other incident responders, such as law enforcement, health and medical professionals, not folks that are also dealing with impacts and incidents, but outside of the world, outside of the cyber world. As far as dealing with other agencies, obviously, in today's world, we deal with our businesses are interconnected, highly interdependent, whether it comes to other organizations, other counties, other states, cities. We share data with one another. Our business processes depend on each other, and an issue or a gap or vulnerability within the business process can have a downstream negative effect or impact to an outcome of said business process. So we really need to get more effective in what we're doing is trying to baseline where are we interconnected, where are we exchanging data. For example, we went through multiple or myriads of exercises with the public health agencies as we're rolling out or scaling up testing efforts within the California Department of Public Health. Within that supply chain, obviously, there's a lot of labs, there's a lot of medical providers that may not be state government departments that we have to integrate with and exchange data and assure higher levels of integrity or accuracy of that data and minimize any chances of that data being corrupted, manipulated either by accident or maliciously. Obviously, with a critical business process like that, it could, if corrupted or attacked, it could obviously impact quite a bit in terms of kinetic impact when it comes to testing. And furthermore, obviously, we'll be dealing with cold chain or supply chain with the vaccine distribution and vaccine management. So managing that third-party relationship becomes key and important. And I like to break it down as preemptive efforts and reactive or responsive efforts. The more you do on the preemptive side, the more natural or organic you will be when you're dealing with an incident or an unprecedented event. Obviously, there are the basics that you need to do operationally before an incident happens, or as we like to say, left of boom or left of a major or before a major catastrophic event happens. Obviously, some basic things that we're doing, or we all actually need to be doing, obviously good hygiene and patch management. Another example is setting up a lab, being able to have a malware analysis capability for cyber-related incidents, having that forensics investigative data acquisition process, not just for your on-premises networks or for your organizations, but nowadays for cloud environments. During the course of the pandemic, especially these days, a lot of us or a lot of our departments that I oversee in my current role are moving their processes and workloads into the cloud. So we need to really figure out how to operate some of those basic security controls and make them tactical and operational in cloud environments or decentralized environments. And then that also spans to enabling the remote workforce and supporting remote users and how they communicate and connect to critical resources. Other thing is obviously resource mapping, knowing where your data is, whether it's on cloud, in the on premises, or in a third-party provider. You know, like I mentioned, we have a lot of data exchanges. We often don't realize where our data resides, especially when it comes to the business or program unit. Getting a hold of a data set and and processing it maybe locally on a workstation, on a laptop, or on a personal device at home, which are obviously, you know, could lead to downstream negative catastrophic impact. So we need to really map that out, map out how our businesses interact with our data, and be able to threat model those issues and handle them accordingly. Another thing I like to do is resource map capabilities. Know where the skill sets and talents are with your partner organizations. So the folks that you would be coordinating an incident with, you know, know who the top architects are for a certain system or technology or product stack. Just mapping out those specialties will definitely help when you're dealing with an unprecedented event or reacting to an incident. Those are just some of the things that kind of become organic when you do all those things ahead of time. Maybe towards the end, I'll point folks to establishing a relationship with MISAC. If folks go to cissecurity.org/MS-ISAC, that's MS-ISAC. There are a lot of free and useful resources that MS-ISAC provides to the counties and cities, localities. They've been highly valuable to the state. So I definitely wanted to point folks there as well. And they also have incident response resources that can come out and help support folks on site if the incident warrants that criticality. And back over to you, Jimmy.
Thank you, Vitaly. We're about to go deep in the weeds on how you put together a cyber annex, but before we do that, I have a question for Marty. You know, Marty, we're in a situation where we see cybercrime on the rise, and a lot of attacks happen through the end user. So my question for you, you know, you said as the program manager of Cal Poly's California Cybersecurity Institute, you do a lot of training throughout the state. Why does the everyday person need to be cyber informed?
I think Vitaly highlighted from a higher level, you can see the entire state is engaged in protecting and defending the Republic. But what you see is kind of like the neighborhood watch days. They can only act on the intelligence or the information that they can gather from the community. We need individuals seated across the state who can identify trends, patterns, incidences, and are at least versed enough to know how to elevate and drive awareness or situational response so that the state can respond. If there's no notification process, if there's no awareness that a threat is out there, it could lurk for 6 months, a year, multiple years, and slowly degrade an organization or the state's capability. So there are a lot of resources available. Vitaly already identified some of the free ones out there. The California Employment Training Panel is also funding some digital literacy for everyday employers. Please contact us if you're interested in that. In addition, Cal Poly is putting together kind of an offensive posture for a corporation. It's really incident response posturing, but really looking at how do you make your organization positioned, like Vitaly said, left of the boom. How do you get ready? It's going to happen. How do you mitigate the pain when it does happen? And it's all about making sure that the ecosystem can respond appropriately. You don't have to be the SME at everything, but as the emergency management folks will tell you, you need to know where the SME is to go get help. And I think what this really highlights with the MISAC, CDT, California Army National Guard, Cal OES, your fusion centers, the state is positioned with the resources to respond, but they can only do that when they're informed of the incident, and it's dependent upon a well-educated population to provide that source data.
Thanks a lot, Marty.
And if I may add to that, the state of California, we are expanding and scaling up our incident response capability with the Office of Emergency Services, the California Cybersecurity Integration Center, which is a joint partnership between core partners, the California Department of Technology, OES, CHP, and the California Military Department. So we're scaling up that task force to be able to sustain any incidents happening locally within our localities. And there are a whole variety of other services that they'll provide that are more preemptive or proactive. But yeah, incident response will be one of those services, and we'll share some contact information on how to report incidents over to the state or over to CalSIC. And we'll get Jimmy to broadcast those links and contact details towards the end.
Yeah, Vitaly, if I can just add one thing, I think for everyone who's on this webinar, what you're hearing is the state is able and willing to respond to your requirement as long as you can articulate what your requirement is. We're here to help. We've got a lot of resources to bring to bear for you. And all we're asking you to do is be receptive and reach out to the appropriate people.
Yeah, and I just highlighted some of those. If you have your screenshot ready, there's some couple contacts on the screen that you can look at. Anyone else want to comment that before I go to my next question? All right, Deborah, my question for you is a tough one. How does somebody get started doing this?
Oh, that's a great question. But, you know, Jimmy, the question is not so much how, but do it. Just get started, right? Because it might seem daunting. All of this seems daunting, but there's a lot of help and there's a lot of partnership out there. When I started with Placer County in 2017, I could see right away that I had to change the mindset, right, about cybersecurity. So I started a campaign to raise awareness that cybersecurity is not an IT issue, it's a business issue. If you're in business or you're in government, it's everybody's issue, right? So I started talking to the Office of Emergency Services to see what they had, because cyber attacks, that's part of the new landscape, and risk management, like what does our insurance look like expanding, my responsibility for cybersecurity goes way out into the organization partnerships with others. So I'll just share my story about getting started. I was working with a consultant, right, to write some sort of a cyber plan for Placer County. And it was 2017, and my CIO came back from a meeting at City of Roseville. City of Roseville is the largest city in Placer County. So he came back with a hard copy of their cyber annex. And I was like, wow, this is great. I sat right down and started making notes on it. So, and I ended up, doing less with the consultant. I ended up doing less with the consultant and more with work that he had done at City of Roseville. I took his cyber annex and used it as a template and developed the Placer cyber annex. It's a little bit different. The roles are a little bit different. The scope is a little bit larger, but it gave me a great way to start. And I would say to everybody, you're not on your own. Like, we're all, especially public sector, we can share, we're all in this together, and we want to know who are our neighbors, what are our neighbors doing, right? And coordinate the cities with the county. And then also at the state level, Vitaly's office released their cyber annex in January, available, with a Google search on the web, very informative. So between the cyber annexes that have been developed for cities like Roseville, counties like Placer, and the state, if we all communicate and talk together, they have the basic components, and then you just communicate with your own emergency operations people, those folks, and get coordinated with them, I would say.
Thank you for that. Deborah just mentioned the City of Roseville. You all were an early adopter to this. You've been doing this for about 5 years. Could you share with us a little bit about your journey?
Sure, Jimmy. Yeah, we started, I think, in late 2014. There was some law going on in the state. You know, there were some new assembly bills that were going on, and it was, you know, everything was moving towards needing to have improved cyber readiness. And so, you know, back in 2012, the city kind of moved its emergency management model to include what we call the emergency management team. So it took the load off the department heads and the fire department and kind of moved it on managers that are, you know, one manager per department. So we have 15 people on the team. And we work with the fire department to make sure that all the emergency management stuff, the EOC drills and everything happen every 6 months, and that we're keeping up on all the documentation. Well, I talked to the team because I was a member of it, and I said, look, you know, there's a cyber annex that we can do. I found out FEMA's got a template, and, you know, a cyber incident could really take us to ground because we've got our own utilities, you know, electric and water. So if we got an attack at that level, there could be some serious physical things that our EOC would need to address. And so everybody was on board. We had utilities, we had public works, everybody was, yeah, let's do this. So we got our work group together, including our attorneys and everybody else, following FEMA's template. And, you know, probably within, you know, 5 or 6 months, we had our draft fairly well complete. You know, it was a work in progress. And then we decided that we would do a cyber exercise through our EOC in November of 2015. We invited Cal OES, we invited Placer, our neighboring cities and everybody to come to this drill. And we had all department heads and all EMT staff on deck. And we presented some information I received from FEMA. There was like a drill platform. It wasn't a tabletop. We did a real, like, there was videos and there was other things that made it seem a lot more realistic. And we were able to solicit a lot of things out of the departments of what happens if this goes wrong. We simulated a power outage, which cut across the city, and used that as the focal point. And it was interesting to see. We came up with a lot of really interesting outcomes from that meeting. Everybody was surprised, and everybody understood the value of it. So we put the final touches on our document following that drill from some of the hot wash we did at the end to make sure that everything was working well. And that was that. We've been kind of moving along since, and we're getting to that point where, after seeing Vitaly's cyber annex, I kind of want to jump on ours again and modernize it, because you know, 5 years ago it was still a new thing, and there's been a lot of improvements. So I'd strongly recommend you guys look at Vitaly's cyber annex. It's really well done.
Thank you for that. I have a few more questions, and just everyone listening in, we have just a ton of people coming in from all over the state. Start preparing your questions, loading them up in the Q&A. I have a handful of more questions for the panelists, and we'll shift over shortly to that. Deborah, I want to talk to you about CSIRT, and what I'd like to do, I'm going to put up a slide, but I'd like you to talk a little bit more about what that means and why it's important to our people listening in today.
Sure, Jimmy. I love to talk about our CSIRT. I think it's something that's going really well at Placer. Placer County, the CSIRT, Cybersecurity Incident Response Team, is not an IT team. It's an executive, a deputy director's level team. And I laid this out. It was described and diagrammed in our cyber annex. So the CSIRT, I pulled it together in 2018, and you can see this diagram. It is led by the CIO, and the main members on the CSIRT are representatives, deputies from the CEO's office, PIO, risk management, a financial representative, legal, sheriff, information security officer, and the emergency operations center. And then I'd like to meet biannually. We're currently only pulling off annually every year, but it's been really productive. And we invite in with us our neighboring county, Nevada County, Cal OES, and City of Roseville, to build up those partnerships with neighbors. In an event, so this is the team that practices together. In an event, we would also plan on calling it the left panel, any impacted business, like if it was Health and Human Services within Placer County, if that's where the cyber event took place, we would pull in the deputies from Health and Human Services to work with us. But really important with what Vitaly was saying about preparedness. It's really important to get all the people at the table. And with this group, I've written up roles and responsibilities, a matrix of roles. It's really important to have PIOs so that any communication out would be handled. They know that they're handling it and everyone knows they're handling it. Risk management has the relationship with our cyber liability insurance vendor. And we have to, we have to follow certain guidelines from them to be eligible for insurance payments. So we need them on the team. Financial representative in case from auditor's office, in case we need to buy services or supplies quickly, like to expedite that. Counsel for legal, an example of that, legal is very important on this team. If we need to bring in a company to do forensics or any sort of third-party help, we have to watch carefully the agreements to protect our sensitive data, the HIPAA protected data, CJIS data. Even in an emergency, we have to make sure we have all the agreements in place to protect that data. Sheriff has special connections to the FBI, and also they have very good training in forensics. We can use our own sheriff's department and emergency operations. So it's been so fruitful for Placer County to get this group together. My intention is to, we're all going to be hit by a cyber attack at some point. It's just inevitable. It's part of business. But I think the thing that we can do is prepare. And a big part of preparedness is knowing who's who to talk to, how to proceed. Okay, well, we talked about that. Every meeting of the CSERT, we talk through some situation, a little 15-minute situation that we get from the MISAC. So at least we've thought through, the exact same thing is not going to happen to us, but at least we have some practice. It was all about just getting some practice. So thanks, Jimmy.
No, you're welcome. And
hey, Jimmy, can I add something to that?
Absolutely, Marty, please go ahead.
Deborah, I love how you put this together in a simple graphic so that the organizations out there can understand each piece of the puzzle has its own role and responsibility. It used to be that people thought cybersecurity was an IT responsibility.
Well, that's true.
IT is a support agency to any organization. You've got legal, now you've got cyber insurance, you've got different response mechanisms that trigger based on the event. And it really is a leadership direction for what an organization does that needs to be defined before you're responding to an incident. And I love how you're doing rehearsals, even though it's one a year, it is preparing your team for their role and responsibility. And I think if anybody takes anything away from this presentation, it might be the most important thing, Deborah, is if people don't understand their responsibility in an event, then they're going to be scrambling and trying to figure out what the action is to do. It doesn't have to be perfect, but there does need to be a plan in place. And that's what's having an emergency action plan and an annex helps facilitate. Very important.
And I would throw in, Marty, the roles and responsibility thing, because we didn't want to be in the incident and then saying, who handles that or who would make that decision? Like in the case of ransomware, we don't want a department deciding that they would pay a ransom, right? Because that decision is the CEO's decision. So we've made that very clear, like just where the responsibilities lie. Yeah, thanks.
And Deborah, and that's even more important because whether a county or municipality agrees or doesn't agree to pay a ransom, those are individual decisions, but the state needs to be aware of what is happening within that because it may be replicating across the state. So while one individual county or division might be like, hey, I need this access or I need this capability, I'm going to make the decision for our organization to do that. You at least have to triage up into the food chain so that the state can take an offensive posture to stop the spread. And it's so important that, yes, you're right. IT doesn't make that decision. The leadership makes that decision. But if there's not a framework around that, it really does degenerate down into chaos.
And you know, we really want to have our cities at the table and our neighboring county, because just like you said, Marty, we want to know the same thing could be hitting them at the same time. Or if it's not hitting them, they have resources that could help us, right, at that time. So that's what we're thinking.
And if anybody's not getting the CalSIC report, but Vitaly, I know the CalSIC is putting out a really good daily threat or an email warning if something is taking place, and you guys can reach out to the CalSIC directly to join that mailing list.
So yeah, I'll definitely direct folks to calcic.org. That's calcic.org, and there is a sign up page.
All right, I have just 2 more questions for the panel. For everyone listening in, use the question and answer feature on the Zoom chat board to submit your questions, and we'll get to that. Marty, I want to shift gears back over to you as you're talking about this. Cal Poly Cyber Institute, you do research, you do training. What are some of the areas like that you're training people? I know you all have very high-end training, but you also have regular types training. Can you talk a little bit about how you're interacting with, the state of California and its organizations?
Yeah, for anybody that doesn't know, Cal Poly, we're a university like any other CSU, California State University system. We're really focused on workforce development, or a 4-year pipeline for our students. However, the California Community College system actually has 1.5 million non-traditional students that really do generate kind of that workforce development issue. So we've got a lot of relationships in place, whether it's through the CSU, whether it's directly with CDT, whether it's here with MISAC, or your urban area security initiative, the Cal OES CSTI. And what we're trying to do is make sure that the training that the state needs is available through a state partnership or contract vehicle, lower the barrier for acquisition, and also lower the acquisition price. Most often, cyber training is very prohibitive. I'm not disputing the quality of the training through SANS, but SANS is historically $7,000 a week. In a public sector organization, that is very difficult to obtain. So what we really look to do as part of this state cyber workforce development nexus is leverage outside funding. So, if you come to Cal Poly, we can use DHS funding, FEMA funding, state funding, and really respond to your individual organizational requirements based on where you are on a maturation process. So we do have some digital literacy, like I call it digital literacy because it's Cybersecurity 101, and really elevates the existing workforce to try to get them to do best practices, but also take things that they can take home and improve their individual actions. We've also got some organizational training. We're launching a statewide cloud upskilling program with the 29 community colleges that used to be called the California Contract Education Consortium, but now they've rebranded as Upskill California, because we really feel like though the 4 years we do put out a great degree product, we only put out as a collective, the UCs and the CSUs, we really only put out 3,000 cybersecurity specialists a year. And as California, we're somewhere around 75 or 76,000 short. So we feel like partnering with the community college, make sure we can upskill that mid-level, low-level workforce, as well as delivering advanced certification for those individuals that want to port career or upskill their existing capabilities. We really feel like through our state partnerships, we're in a position to respond to the state's requirements.
Thanks, Marty. And again, everyone listening in, if you'll start submitting your questions, we have a few coming in through the Q&A dashboard. My last question is for Vitaly. Vitali, when a cyber attack happens, it just doesn't impact your organization. There are third-party vendors, there's an entire supply chain. Can you share with a little bit about the process to manage that? And Vitali, I can
I
see
am
you
on mute.
open,
Yep.
but I can't hear you yet. There you go. Great.
Yeah. Managing risk for organizations we do not control. Yeah, that definitely becomes a challenge. Obviously, one of the obvious things we do and everybody else does is, having contractual requirements,
Mhm.
FedRAMP, SOC 2, um, varying regulatory attestation bodies, which nowadays every major product service provider attains these days. But is that really enough, right? Compliance and security requirements, is that enough? Being a realist, I'll always say no. So how do we go beyond that and actually validate that certain security controls or requirements are being implemented and managed on a continuous basis? Um, so we definitely have a practice of validating any documents submitted via attestation processes via FedRAMP and SOC. However, we also evaluate organizations getting onto our contractual procurement vehicles. So really partnering up with the Department of General Services or the authority that's that's over our procurement for the state of California. So really evaluating kind of high risk organizations or high risk contracts for various threats. Right. One of the things to evaluate or watch out for is the foci, or what we call foci, or in the
Mhm.
national government, foreign owned, controlled, or influenced organizations. So really watching for those organizations that do have a nation state foreign influence, and there's various mechanisms to do that and assess organizations for that. Um, what we do is we work with our intelligence analysts stationed within the California Cybersecurity Integration Center, CalSIC, which is our primary conduit into the federal government. So we have folks that are embedded within the CalSIC that have top secret and secret level clearances that do have access to sensitive information and are able to attain and collect tactics, techniques, and procedures used by certain adversaries, and I guess conduct more deep research on companies. That's one of the ways. Obviously, there's a lot of other things that we can do. OSINT, open source intelligence, and then we also started leveraging attack surface mapping tools or services that are out there, and there is a market for those. They're also known as continuous rating services. They go out and assess and check the external attack surface of an organization. How susceptible are they to attack using open source reconnaissance tactics, and be able to put a score on an organization on how they're doing security maturity wise, and then we could factor that in as we select and evaluate our partners, our commercial private sector partners. And we've definitely implemented, conducted some of those practices when onboarding some of the emergency contracts during COVID response. That there were some pretty high visibility efforts that were that we had, or that we were involved with. And so implementing tactics like that to actually go in and validate security requirements, hold ourselves and partners accountable to those requirements. One of the things I run as part of my program are pen test assessments and audits that we conduct against our state agencies. There are about 140 of them within the state organization. So we collect a lot of data, telemetry, and visibility on gaps and progress of maturity, and are able to correlate those to what we attain and see in our threat intelligence practice, and be able to prioritize risk for the appropriate security measures that actually need to be funded, implemented, and continuously managed as a state. So that level of risk management definitely helps, but it's really holding everybody, including ourselves, accountable to practices, not just to say, yeah, we do them, we meet FedRAMP, we meet SOC, but we actually can demonstrate those practices. Transparency is key.
Thanks, Vitaly. We are right about a quarter to the top of the hour. Our audience has stayed with us the entire time from all over the great state of California. We're now going to open it up to your questions for the panelists. I'm going to ask everyone, if you do have a question, we'll try to get to it in the time we have. In the event we can't answer your question, we'll certainly respond to you after the event. First question that came in, I'm going to open this up to the panel. Is your cybersecurity plan a part of your business continuity plan? And if someone would like to comment on that, again, is your cybersecurity plan part of your business continuity plan? Would someone like on the panel like to take a shot at that question coming in from the audience? So do you typically have cybersecurity as part of your business continuity plan? All right.
So I'll start off on that one. When we did our EOC cyber exercise, we brought the business, basically the BIA, in as one of the artifacts that people were going to use to help make decisions. And I think it was a good exercise. I would say that, you know, when you're dealing with an incident, it really depends on the dynamics and kinetics of that incident as to where your pressure points are going to be. You may be looking at a document that in certain ways almost as a doomsday thing, because that's how people were looking at it when it was developed. But in reality, you may have certain areas that are working fine, others that aren't. You may have payroll boundaries that you need to meet that have to be met today. You know, there's all kinds of priorities that can cause an executive, and this kind of gets what back to Deborah was saying, is that there's certain decisions that the executive is going to make based on the here and now. And so that document can really help steer your plan. But and then if you're in the emergency, like if you're using emergency management, you'll understand that you're then going to go for your recovery following that. So that gets part of the way down the question, but I don't think it answered it all the way. I don't know if Deborah or Vitaly want to try and jump in on that.
You know, one thing, that's great, Art. One thing that I would say in thinking about Placer County is the business continuity plan is for us to continue business as Placer County, right? And I would hate to be going down that road if we have a regional event, right? Because I don't want to just think about Placer County. So we have the business continuity plan, but with the cyber annex and the emergency plan, hopefully we will get that you know, reaching out, like we were talking about before, downstream and upstream. Like, are the cities activated? Are their emergency centers activated? How can we partner? We got to notify the state. You know, like going through my business continuity plan, I wouldn't necessarily notify the state. Maybe I should think about that. But, you know, if you're in a cyber event using the cyber annex, those relationships out regionally and across the state are so important. I think that you don't stay in a bubble of what you're suffering through, right?
Yeah, Deborah, you know, it's easy when you see a fire burning across a hill, you know, and you know it's moving towards property or the loss of life. The system has been responding to that kind of threat for a very long time, and we're doing a really good job at protecting the state. But the cyber is not an all or nothing. There could be a slow degradation of services, even though 3 counties over, they got full loss of services. And that's why that cross communication is so important, and that awareness campaign is so important, because you might still be able to operate even though you're at a degraded capability. And if you don't have the network of threat information and communication, you might not understand that your degradation is coming from a cyber attack. It could be an outage. It could be a simple IT issue. So that awareness really shapes the response. But I agree with you. It's not an all or nothing in a cyber environment.
Yeah, I'll add on to that. I mean, cyber is definitely a part of doing business. And a part of doing business, we do need to incur and inherit a level of risk. And in order to do that, we need to we need to be well informed of the positive and negative ramifications of incurring that risk. Obviously, certain risks do have rewards, but then once that risk does get realized, they can have severe and catastrophic impacts. So the plans definitely need to intersect with the business, and one way we do it in the state of California is through the state emergency plan and the cybersecurity annex, which the cybersecurity part we referred to it as the ESF 18, Emergency Support Function 18 within the emergency plan, which also has a bunch of other ESFs that deal with natural disasters, earthquakes, fires, etc. But then cyber security does need to have a little bit of independence as well, because as opposed to natural disasters, cybersecurity disasters aren't as probabilistic as, let's say, an earthquake or a flood. When you build a building or a building these days, they rate it for a certain category, earthquake or flood, or a certain category of a natural disaster. And that doesn't change, right? And generally, that more or less stays pretty static. So your threat in the physical kinetic sense of the world stays pretty static. Well, in our world, in cybersecurity, our threats aren't as probabilistic. They're getting more evolved, sophisticated, as our defenses evolve as well. So we're constantly playing a cat and mouse game, or evolving our defenses, and naturally our threats evolve as well. So we definitely need to have that mindset that our threats aren't as probabilistic, and we need to be a little bit more dynamic and update our IR plans as such, our response mechanisms as such, just to kind of decouple it from your business plan. But at the same time, identify where cyber risk can tie into how your organization makes decisions and runs your business, because cyber is a cost of running your organization. It's a cost of doing anything. So risk does play a big factor. So I would say, yeah, it definitely needs to connect and be a part of the business level discussion.
We have, for everyone listening, we're going to stop right at the top of the hour. We have a handful of questions coming in, and we'll try to get to everyone, but realistically, we'll have to respond to some of you after the event. But I want to try to pull some of these together. Listening in today, we have from government organizations to law enforcement to the vendor community to academia, K through 12. And one of the questions that came in, Vitaly, I'd like you to take a stab at this one as well as Marty, is, what kind of programs are available to teaching youth? Vitaly, I know you do quite a bit with the Cyber State America program.
Yes, so we've been partnering up with Cyber Start America this year. Actually, it's renamed this year to encompass high schools. Previously, it was called Girls Go Cyber Start. It was really marketed or intended for girls in high school. Essentially, what this program does, it's an education program in a national competition, capture the flag format, various cyber exercises as part of the competition. Mm-hmm. At the end of the program, they get national recognition. Most states in the nation participate, and states are actually competing to see who gets the most participation in high schools and students. I would definitely encourage folks to go to the URL and domain, which I will share. That is cyberstartamerica.org. And then students also get an opportunity to potentially win a scholarship. There's a pool of about $2 million that students can win a scholarship for. There's already within the state of California about 68 students, high school students that have got to the level where they can qualify for a scholarship. So just wanted to get folks to promote this endeavor so that California could be in the #1 spot and actually beat Texas. And then, so it already started. There's a registration. It opened. It cuts off on March 8th. And there's a kind of a pre-qualification round, a pre-game type format. And then on the 4th of April, the actual competition or capture the flag CTF game. Sorry, I got the dates mixed up. To qualify, it's up to March 8th. And then the game closes April 4th.
Thanks,
And
Mike.
then, so we'll share the details. I would definitely encourage folks to go to the URL. I'll post it in the Q&A.
I'm going to try to squeeze in 2 more questions. And Marty, could you also quickly comment? I know that this year during COVID, Cal Poly had about 400 students come in from all over the state in a virtual competition. Could you comment real quick on that too? And then I want to try to squeeze in 2 more questions before we wrap up.
Yeah, real quick. So, it's our 4th year running the California Cybersecurity or Cyber Innovation Challenge. Like Jimmy said, we hosted a virtual event for 400 students, and we really got the model right. And so next year, we're launching a Cyber to Schools campaign with Cisco, Verizon, Dell, Palo Alto Networks. And what we're going to try to do is get 20,000 students participating on an online virtual capture the flag kind of digital forensics exercise so that they can envision themselves in these careers. We use virtual reality, gamification, and the technical depth varies depending on how far into the challenge you get. But it really allows students to explore the opportunity and to participate in cyber. We put a space nexus on it because we're really trying to capture the folks and their attention. It's a little bit easier to do that around space than it is cyber. So we blend the two together. But we'd love to, anybody that's interested in supporting that, we're looking for coaches, mentors, and teachers that'll partner with your local schools to help drive additional participation. Thank you.
We have so many great questions coming in, and we're just going to run out of time to answer all these. So if we don't answer your questions, we will get back to you. I'll send them out to the panelists. But one of the questions that came in from the vendor community is, are there any emerging opportunities for IT vendors with these cybersecurity programs coming up that they should know about? Would that be just to check your procurement websites and learn more from there? Is there anything as you're pulling together, cyber annexes in response to attack, anything for the vendor community to know?
Definitely would like to open that up. Some of our broader, bigger strategic initiatives we're trying to push is centralized identity management or digital ID. Constituent-based, resident-based digital ID is something that really needs to happen across, not just state, but up and down all of government. I'm tired of having a separate account to pay my local property taxes, to paying my state income tax, to conducting business with, getting a fishing license and all these other services. There's a unique way or everybody has a unique way to register and validate your identity. And that's kind of becoming a challenge. It's not conducive to inclusivity and having reach of digital services to everybody. It's hard to use. So we're definitely having some internal broader level discussions on, what do we need to do to steer that ship in the right direction. And it is a big ship, which will require potential legislation policy changes. But that's something that's worthy of benefiting the broader resident base of California. Digital IDs.
Thanks a lot, Vitaly. We are right at the top of the hour. I appreciate our audience staying with us. There are a handful of questions we just simply don't have time to get through today. We could almost do another webinar on that, but I want to take a moment to, of course, thank our panelists for joining us today. This was truly one of the most riveting discussions we've had in the MISAC Cyber City series. I want to encourage you all to stay tuned for next year. We have some great topics coming up. You can see that on your screen. If you registered for today's webinar, we'll be sending you some more information on that. I also want to encourage anyone that's out there. This is geared not only for the law enforcement community where they can earn post credit, but as well as the public. We're doing a series on cyber basics. You can take a snapshot of that on your screen. And then we have some links for you that you can stay informed. We're going to put this webinar out on all demand. And like I said, we had a handful of questions that we simply couldn't get to today, but we'll certainly do that. On behalf of MISAC, the City of Roseville, and our esteemed panelists today, I want to thank you, the audience, for joining us for what I believe was truly a riveting discussion about cybersecurity in the state of California. Thank you, and make it a great day.